Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Ice the Kicker alongside Matt Ferrara. My name is Glen Denigris. It was kind of a boring game. It's not the classic Super Bowl that we've come accustomed to. Most of the time, it's down to the wire. Last week, we kind of assumed that it would be, but it wasn't. It was Tampa Bay really putting full throttle on the Chiefs really from the get-go. 31-9. Kansas City does not score a single touchdown in this game, held to just 3 field goals. Mahomes running for his life the entire game. Chiefs offensive line just had nothing. They had a few injuries, but that's no excuse by the time you get to the Super Bowl. And I think the big story that's going to come out of the Super Bowl is Tom Brady, first year in a new organization after 20 years in New England, gets that 7th Super Bowl, and he brings along Gronkowski, who had 2 touchdown catches along with him. Brady's the MVP. And you can make the argument, Matt, that, Brady might have not really deserved the MVP. And instead it was that defense of Tampa Bay that really just shut Kansas City down. They couldn't get anything going. Kelsey, Hill, crucial drops at various points in this game. And Tampa Bay, they took advantage. The Kansas City defense kind of unraveled a little bit, lost their composure with the Matthew and Brady kind of back and forth. But, the better team was Tampa Bay, and the better team won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I just really thought, again, I wasn't surprised with how good the defense was for the Buccaneers, but I definitely didn't expect the Chiefs to not score 1 touchdown. They looked bad, and I know they looked bad, which also means that Tampa Bay's defense looked good too. But like you said, there were some key drops, there were some key penalties, there were some key coaching blunders that we'll get into a little bit later. But it just, you really looked at the Chiefs and they didn't play half as good as they usually do. And the Buccaneers were firing on every single cylinder possible. And I feel like you have to tip the cap to the coaching staff and to Brady for that leadership to have them playing the best in the biggest game of the season. I mean, I don't know who else do you give credit to.
You got to give credit to Brady. You got to give credit to Arians. Obviously, Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator for the Buccaneers, deserves a ton of credit for being able to neutralize that Kansas City offense. And, I don't want to take anything away from Tampa Bay because they deserve to win this game, and they were the better team over the course of the 60-minute football game that we watched on Sunday. But a couple things. One, Kansas City looked like they never played in a Super Bowl before, and they were in the Super Bowl last year. Like they've never played in a big game before, almost like the moment was too big for them. I don't know how that's possible with all the big games that this team has played in over the last 3 years. Two, a lot of, and I know this sounds like, a classic, Brady hater guy, but there was a lot of questionable penalties on the defensive side for the Kansas City Chiefs. The one that really sticks out into my head was Brady threw a ball into the back of the end zone, wasn't catchable, but they still called a hold or the pass interference on Matthew, and that put the ball at the 1-yard line. That's one. Somebody lined up in the neutral zone on a field goal attempt, kept that same drive alive. Next play, I think, was to Gronk, or it was a different drive, but next play was to Gronk for a touchdown. So that's 7 points instead of 3. That trip on
Mike
Evans down the far sideline, that was questionable in my opinion, because you can make the argument that Brady kind of overthrew him a little bit, but that's too close to call. I was fine with that call, even though it could have gone either way. But just everything that could have gone wrong for the Chiefs went wrong.
Yeah, so basically, like you said, the Mike Evans one, I definitely think was a penalty. Now, I still also think it easily probably was overthrown, but I was fine with that call. The Matthew call in the end zone, I wasn't really fine with, because even though Matthew kind of made contact, the ball was 30 rows into the stand, so I didn't really understand that ruling at all. And then again, and then going now to the blunders of the Chiefs, the biggest one I think is that neutral zone infraction on the field goal. Like what are you doing? And again, like you said, that instead of 3 points, now it's 7 points. And then another big thing, kind of turning point in the game, was end of the first half. Buccaneers have the ball. It's like 3rd and 1, and there's like 40 seconds left, and Kansas City calls timeout.
Yeah.
Like that to me made absolutely zero sense. The best case scenario there is you stop them, you call your second or third timeout, and then you get the ball back. You're assuming at best at the 20, like your own 20
Mhm.
with 35 seconds left.
Yeah.
You're not doing it and one timeout. Like you're not doing anything with that. That made absolutely no sense to me. And then that drive ended up being another 7 points. So a 14-point swing off one coaching blunder and then one blunder on defense with the special teams.
Yeah, it made no sense, especially because the Chiefs were getting the ball back at the start of the third quarter anyway. So there's really no point to
Mhm.
kind of get greedy there. I could have understood it if they were not going to get the ball at the end of the half or when the third
Mhm.
quarter started, so that, they wanted to get points on the board before they had to give it back to Brady. But I agree with you 1,000%. There was no reason to call a timeout there. Helped the Buccaneers and helped Tom Brady immensely. The last thing you want to do is stop the clock for Tom Brady at the end of a half. It's the last thing you want to do.
Mhm.
Opinion, Matt. The game turns in favor of the Buccaneers dramatically on that soft holding call on the interception that was negated.
Yes.
That was the
Mhm.
complete game changer in this game because I don't know exactly what the score was, but the game was still well within reach. It might have been 14-6. I don't know exactly when it
Mhm.
was. I when I get a chance, I'll look it up. But, you
Mhm.
know, Chiefs get that interception there, all the momentum in the world goes back to Kansas City. And, who knows, maybe Patrick Mahomes drives down the field, they score, Chiefs have the lead, bam, it's a different game. That
Mhm.
penalty to me was very soft, especially since it occurred nowhere near where the ball was. It was on
Yeah.
Brady threw it more towards the slot, got tipped and picked. That penalty was on the outside. I didn't like that call at all.
Yeah, I mean, again, this just goes back to, I think, an issue that is in all sports for the most part, and we kind of foreshadowed a refing issue or officiating issue against the Bucks and Green Bay game where they were letting everything play, whether people liked it or not. They were letting everything play, and by the rules, they were clearly letting a lot slide in and quote unquote missing calls. Now, people were kind of like, oh, well, like you let him play. And then obviously that play at the end, which was a holding, the guy's jersey was yanked. And they're like, how do you call that now? And that's what we talked about, saying how, hey, like just call it right from the beginning. And now, flash forward into this game, kind of a similar issue where they were too, I guess, sensitive to contact and they were calling too many fouls. And then it's like there's certain ones that they let go and then there's certain ones that they call. And then just again, it's always in the biggest stages of sports that the officiating seems to have too much of an impact on the game. And you hate to go or leave this game, whether you're a Chiefs fan or a Buccaneers fan, and have the game kind of being questioned. Like Brady's seventh ring, we're questioning because there was a lot of kind of malpractice in the officiating. And then as a Chiefs fan, they probably feel like they kind of got robbed in some sense. And again, not totally because their offense basically just collapsed, but they couldn't really do anything on defense because every time they put a hand on a defender, for the most part, it was going to be called a penalty. So a very kind of blah, like kind of outcome from the game just because we felt that the
Yeah.
officials played too much of a role.
The last thing you want in a championship game, especially the Super Bowl, is for the referees to have their fingerprints all over the game. And I'm not saying that
Mhm.
the Chiefs lost because the questionable calls on the pass interferences or on the holdings, because the Chiefs would have lost the game anyway. Kelsey
Mm.
dropped a ball on a third down that would have extended a
That
drive.
was huge. Yeah.
There was two throws that Mahomes made. One of them, we'll get to it later about the pressure that was on Mahomes. One of them he
Mhm.
threw parallel to the ground, 30 yards in the
Mhm.
air, hit a receiver in the face mask in the end zone. There was another one earlier in the game where, Mahomes scrambled down the far sideline, turned his body kind of like a shortstop in the center field hole, like flipping it to first, threw
Mhm.
it 40 yards down the field, hit Tyreek Hill in the helmet, incomplete. Like there was reasons why the Chiefs won that have nothing to do with the officiating. It's just unfortunate that there was some questionable calls that could have changed the momentum in the game. Like if those calls
Mhm.
aren't made, some touchdowns turn into field goals, some field goals turn into, what was an interception. The game's different, but at the end of the day, the Chiefs didn't deserve to win this game. And I think that the Chiefs didn't deserve to win this game. Is because their offensive line probably played the worst football I've ever seen an offensive line play given the circumstances. Now, I'm a Giants fan. I've seen a lot of bad offensive lines in my day. That's kind of like our staple. Eric Flowers like still keeps me up at night. Like those, Eli Manning lost dozens of games over the last 7 years of his career because he didn't have an offensive line. So I know a bad offensive line when I see one. That offensive line was horrendous. Like Patrick Mahomes could not. I'm watching the highlights to my left right now. Patrick Mahomes had no chance. I don't care how great of a quarterback you are. You could be the best quarterback of all time, right? You're not going to win when your offensive line is, basically parting the Red Sea and you have nowhere to go.
Yeah, I mean, it was an absolute perfect storm for the Buccaneers defense that their front four and even their linebackers as well are probably combined top 5 in the league. And they played against a injured Chiefs offensive line and an offensive line for the Chiefs that just played horrendous, like you said. I mean, I can't tell you how many times JPP on the edge would just run right past, no move, no shimmy, no nothing, just literally sprinted past them. And every single time you would see the offensive lineman's number, the back of their jersey, going to try to protect Mahomes, and they were just chasing after the D lineman. It was just like borderline comical, and it made you question. You're like, this is the team that made the Super Bowl? Like, this is the team that represented the AFC? Like, I was just very kind of,
I was
like
shocked.
shook. Yeah,
shocked.
It didn't make any sense. Like and it wasn't even like, oh, well, the Buccaneers figured out the secret recipe. Like, no, they just got a ridiculous amount of pressure. I mean, and I sent that stat to you and Stick earlier saying how the amount of pressures on or from the Bucs was 38 and from the Chiefs on Brady was 5. I mean, that is just ridiculous.
You can't win games like that. Patrick Mahomes is a great band-aid for any, I guess, issues that the offensive line might have. But when literally nobody on that offensive line is blocking anybody, Patrick Mahomes, there was nothing more he could do. And if you go back and watch the highlights of the throws he was making under duress, it's even crazier watching it in hindsight than watching it in real time. He's making the same exact throws that he makes during the regular season that you just you shake your head and saying, how is this humanly possible? The only problem is, the receivers today or on Sunday didn't catch them. Hill dropped some passes. Yeah, Kelsey dropped a huge pass. There was really nobody else that kind of stepped up. Watkins, I think, had one catch. Pringle wasn't around other than some special teams play. Like, there was nobody there to help Mahomes. And I mean, Mahomes wasn't great. He didn't have, he didn't play the game that he's capable of playing, but it's hard to do that when, nobody on your team helps you. I thought Mahomes, I don't know if you agree with me, and I guess this is how I'm sounding. I put no blame on this game on Patrick Mahomes. Like, what could he have done?
Yeah, no, that's kind of how I think everybody needs to look at whatever their quarterback or team situation is. And obviously everybody wants to blame the quarterback, but I feel like for the first time in the history of the NFL, we saw the losing team and we didn't put the blame on the quarterback. And I think it's refreshing to see that because, like you said, nobody could have done anything. There was no better person for that job that day behind that offensive line. Like, you would have had the same exact result, if not worse, with any other single player in the history of the NFL.
It's the same thing. The same thing happens if you switch quarterbacks. If you put Brady on that Chiefs team with that offensive line, he doesn't even get out of the pocket to make the throws that Mahomes made. It'd probably be even worse. So I don't know. It's a rough loss, and we'll get into the future of Kansas City in a bit, but I do want to highlight Tom Brady because this is his 7th championship and he deserves it. Really can't argue. It's hard to argue that it was Belichick now because he did this without Belichick. I remember in the NBA years ago, before Kobe was able to win without Shaq, it's Shaq, not Kobe, because Shaq left. He won with Miami. And Kobe was with the Lakers, and the team wasn't good for a little bit. But then Kobe finally won. This is all Tom Brady. Tom Brady deserve. He played okay. It wasn't an MVP performance, but he did what he needed to do. This guy is
Hmm.
just a winner, and winning follows him wherever he goes. When he signed a year ago or 11 months ago, whenever it was, with Tampa Bay, we thought it would be a success if he just brought Tampa Bay to the playoffs, because Tampa Bay is an organization, other than the Super Bowl 18 years ago, really doesn't make the playoffs much, not really known for being a winning organization. Tom Brady brought
Hmm.
what was, a perennial losing organization that at best would go 8-8 and surprise, maybe make it into a wild card. He brought them in year one to a Super Bowl championship. He can't prove anything else in his career.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know people want to bash his like physical abilities and his stats and this, that, and the other thing. You can't put a price on good leadership. I mean, and you look what he brought. Besides the fact that he brings himself and his leadership, you brought in Gronk, who was only going with Brady. I would even say Antonio Brown was going only to the Bucks because of Brady. And then you look at another pickup, not because of Brady, but just a 1 year guy in Fournette too. I mean, four monumental key players to this team that were all basically on 1 year deals, or this was their first year in Tampa Bay. And a lot of that is because of Brady. Like, I doubt the Buccaneers bring in Fournette if they don't have Brady and are in a win now mode. So it's just, and again,
They're not
something
bringing
that
in Gronk and
obviously,
AB either.
that's what I mean. So it's just, it's people need to kind of like check themselves a little bit when they hate on Brady for like his skills or anything like that, because he does so much for franchises and you cannot deny that. It's just his level of expertise for the sport of football needs to be appreciated. Like, we cannot go down year after year after year of this guy's career and just try to bash him, try to bash him, try to bash him, because by the time we do, he's going to be 46 years old and still winning Super Bowls.
He seems to have this contagious aura of winning and success. Like, it's not just going to
Mhm.
be him that's going to step up, but he makes people around him elevate their talent and elevate their level of play. And there's only a few
Mhm.
athletes that we've ever seen be like that. LeBron James does
Mhm.
that. Um, I don't think you can even say a guy like Kobe did that. Did MJ really didn't do that? MJ, I guess, yeah, MJ did. I remember the Last
Mhm.
Dance documentary where he got like emotional because he was so demanding of his teammates. But the great athletes, I would say MJ. I don't know if Kobe was like that. LeBron's definitely like that. Hard to be in baseball because it's such an individual team sport.
Yeah.
But he has to be up there with those great, guys, great athletes that not only perform well individually, but also seem to get the best out of their own teammates.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that when people talk about and scouts talk about, do they have that it factor? And then when they really look at somebody's value, a quarterback or a player, do they make the other players around them better? That's kind of what you have to look at. And Tom Brady does that probably better than anybody. Oh, and then or maybe he's second to Aaron Rodgers, but I mean, outside of them two, they make everybody better. Just kind of, it's plain and simple. And he has done it for his whole entire career.
Yeah. I was thinking back to when his free agency started, and it really
Mhm.
seemed to be either the Patriots or the Buccaneers. In hindsight, I can't believe that more teams weren't in on him. There had to be
I
so
mean,
many teams. Like, if he could do it for the Buccaneers, there had to be other organizations that had a similar talent level to Tampa Bay that could have used Tom Brady, and boom, maybe they're in the Super Bowl. But everybody's so in love, Matt, with these young quarterbacks with like Watson and Mahomes and
mhm,
Jackson and Allen and Mayfield. And they should be, because they're going to be the next generation of great quarterbacks in this league. But
mhm.
it, a lot of teams had the opportunity to bring in Tom Brady and make a run at this Super Bowl, and they didn't do it. And I give a lot of credit to the Tampa Bay, I guess, front office for kind of taking the road less traveled. Instead of getting the young stud quarterback and building around him, they said, let's just win the Super Bowl now, or take a shot to win the Super Bowl now. And they did that,
Mhm.
and it paid off.
Yeah, I mean, they were sitting at like the 14th pick in the draft in the first round, something like that. They could have went with a Jalen Hurts, and they could have said, "Hey, he's going to be our franchise quarterback." You wouldn't have gotten nearly the same result as you did now. So, just again, absolute tip of the cap to them for saying, "Hey, our roster right now is perfectly constructed to win." I guess outside of the quarterback, because obviously they had Jameis prior, And obviously Arians wasn't going to wait around for some crazy rebuild or a rookie quarterback. So they just said, screw it. Let's go all in. And you bring in Brady, and then you bring in Gronk, and then you bring in AB, and you bring in Fournette. So I mean, that like this was a perfect example of a team buying in to a Super Bowl that year. And they did it without having to trade multiple first round picks for a quarterback or for any player for that matter. They didn't drop bank in the offseason besides on Brady himself. Outside of him, they didn't really do much. And now they have flexibility this offseason to kind of continue their greatness. Basically, they're not strapped for cash. They still have all seven of their draft picks. So this is what a good team does, or even a great team does from a front office standpoint.
Yeah, if I'm a team, if I'm a fan of a team, let's say like the Cowboys or the Eagles, right? Who else is out there that could have, like, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Rams this year, the
Mhm.
Niners, even though they made it to the Super Bowl the year before. Like all those teams, if you put Brady, that's, I guess I would say, if you take away Brady and the people he brought into the Buccaneers and you put them straight up against, a team like the Eagles or the Cowboys or the Rams, that's a similar roster. So if I'm
Mhm.
a fan of one of those teams, I'm kind of kicking myself saying we missed an opportunity to get a quick Super Bowl with Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean it's something that people need to be hypercritical of their quarterback play after you've seen them with a full complete cast. Like you look at Carson Wentz, like you knew what you were going to get with Carson Wentz, Jared Goff especially. You knew what you were going to get with Jared Goff by year whatever it is, 6 for him, 7 for him. I don't even know what it is. So once you get to that point, and that's what makes it so difficult because the stakes are always higher when you're paying these guys their second contract, which is going to get them hundreds of millions of dollars and probably $30 million a year. So now it's easy to move on from a rookie quarterback because they're only getting paid $8 million. So this was a perfect situation and timeline for the Buccaneers to get rid of Jameis. You weren't strapped for cash, like I was saying before, and then bring in Brady as a plug and play winner.
Let's talk about the narrative now between Brady and Belichick. And we've been kind of
Mm-hmm.
hinting about this last week when we kind of preview this. Had Tom Brady won this game, then, Bill Belichick's legacy might not be as great as it used to be. Brady did win, and he does have the seventh Super Bowl, and he proved that he can do it without Belichick. Now, if Belichick's and if you're Belichick and you're Robert Kraft and you're trying to protect this, I guess, um I get what's the word I'm looking for? If you're trying to protect this, I guess, aura of winning, culture is the
Mm-hmm.
word I'm looking for. If you're trying to protect this
Mm-hmm.
culture that you built in New England and you let your Super Bowl winning quarterback go out the door and he proved that he can do it without you, that's a little bit of a problem for New England. And if I'm, the front office, I'm feeling a little pressure to get this turned around as quickly as possible because Belichick's not getting any younger and he has all of a sudden something to prove that he can win now without Brady.
Yeah, I mean, again, this year I think for the Patriots was a wash, and I think Belichick basically admitted that on multiple
Mhm.
media outlets that he said basically, "Hey, we sold out years prior, we made it to X amount of championships, and we won X amount of championships, so this is the result you get." Basically dissing Cam Newton, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, we're paying him $1 million, and he stinks." But now the issue at hand is that yes, they have a good amount of draft capital and they have a good amount of cap space, but are players going to be jumping at the bit to go to New England? And
Yeah.
that's the thing. When Tom Brady's there, without a doubt, you're gonna have people lining up at the door at Foxborough to come play for them. But right now, like that's what I mean. I don't know if that Patriot way is going to be the same thing without Brady there because there's really like what is enticing about going to the Patriots right now, a team with no quarterback and a
Yeah.
team with kind of no direction, I guess you would say. I still think the coaching staff is great, but I don't know what their vision is, I guess, for 2021 or even 2022 after that.
Yeah, if you're a big time free agent and you're deciding between the Patriots and the Buccaneers, why would you pick the Patriots after what we just saw this year? Because you have Tom Brady,
Mhm.
he's the one that left and won anyway. He's the guy that's the player. He's on the field with you. He's the leader, and he's going to lead you to a championship. And also,
Mhm.
comparing personalities, it seems like, Brady's a little bit more down to earth than I guess Bill Belichick is. Like we see Tom Brady, he's on He's on Twitter, he's on Instagram, he does these things. He's more
Mm-hmm.
relatable to the free agent player than Bill Belichick is. Now, I guess the pressure now is squarely on Bill Belichick because before, when Tom left, before he won the Super Bowl, you would like to see Bill Belichick, win and prove that he wasn't, but it wasn't, I guess, mandatory for his legacy for
Mm-hmm.
him to do that. Now, with Brady winning a Super Bowl without him, I think, in my opinion, it's mandatory. Bill Belichick has to win another Super Bowl before his career is over because his legacy is completely not washed, not completely deleted because, he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. But
Mm-hmm.
he needs to prove that he could lead another guy to a Super Bowl championship because they both came in at the same year and they both had the 20-year stretch together. And then once one guy leaves, he's fine. And, the Patriots struggled this year. If there's a
Mm-hmm.
marriage for 20 years and, there's a divorce and then one gets remarried and has this wonderful life with another family and the other one's
Mm-hmm.
alone for the rest of his life, who had the better deal, right? So I think
Yeah.
Bill Belichick needs to get another Super Bowl with another quarterback, preferably a young one, and then
Mm-hmm.
groom him to take over with, I guess, McDaniels, who's waiting in the wings for
Yeah.
Belichick to retire and kind of have that soar and be his lasting legacy as they continue the career when Belichick steps down.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you said it perfectly, and we've seen that kind of narrative a lot in other sports. I mean, you saw it with Kobe. Oh, Kobe had Shaq, so his biggest thing was I got to win something without him. And then you saw Jordan with Pippen. People always kind of try to bring down Jordan because he needed Pippen and he needed Robin and this, that, and the other. Then LeBron. I mean, I think his biggest feat, I think, in the history of the NBA was that he won without after those Heat years when he had a
Yeah, and
stacked
you can make
team.
the argument that Durant has to win now without Curry and Thompson.
Exactly. So you always see this narrative again. Obviously, when you're at the forefront of a sport and you're the head of the sport, like Brady is and like LeBron is and like all these other people are always going to kind of try to knock your legacy and bring you back down to earth. So now Belichick's on the hot seat, like you were saying, and I totally agree that there is definitely a sense of urgency. Like this isn't something you can slow play and be like, we'll be competitive in like 4 to 5 years as Tom Brady is
No,
still
you can't do that.
competing and winning for championships. Like
And
if I'm
God
the
forbid he
Patriots,
wins another one without Bill,
oh my,
then it's
yeah,
terrible. That's a bad look for Bill Belichick.
no, again, and like you said too, Bill's not getting any younger. And like he's pushing 70, so it's like, how much longer is he even going to do this? Like, what if this kind of next 3 years, I could honestly see it being it. And if they don't get a guy, like draft a guy and then have him be the franchise quarterback, then what is he going to stick around for? I mean, he's done everything. He's proved that he's one of the greatest coaches, but it's like
Yeah.
now it almost
But
turns
what's
into an
going to
ego
keep
thing.
him around longer now is to prove that he can win without Brady. I think if
Hmm.
Brady just went to Tampa, they made it to the playoffs a couple times, they never actually got through to the Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. I think
Hmm.
within 3 years, Bill would have been like, you know what, I'm done. But I think that Brady's Super Bowl is going to light a fire under Bill saying, I need to win one now.
No, I mean I agree 100%, and I know Belichick doesn't really seem to be an ego guy, but there is always a sense of pride, and people are
Mhm.
very protective of their legacy, and that's kind of what we're arguing at the end of the day. It's just Brady versus Belichick, and that's how this whole season started, and that debate isn't going to end until one of them retires.
You mentioned legacy. Let's shift over to the Chiefs and what this loss does for the legacy of the Chiefs, more specifically Patrick Mahomes. Now, the last couple of days, Monday, Tuesday, since the Super Bowl, I've seen a lot of people walk back on their praise for Mahomes, saying, he's not, not saying he's bad, not saying he's not
Yeah.
amazing, but kind of walking back saying he's not this invincible guy. I don't think that's necessarily fair. We got through in the first segment talking about how I think you think none of this is his fault, but he did lose, and that's going to
Hmm.
hurt him in the long run
Hmm.
when he's judged at the end of his career when you put him against, Brady and Montana and Favre and Rodgers. But I don't think that this necessarily is the end of the Chiefs. I remember I saw on Instagram that there was a comparison between the arc of Mahomes' first 3 years and the arc of Russell Wilson's first 3 years. Both made the playoffs in their first year as a starter, lost in the playoffs. both won the Super Bowl and then lost the Super Bowl the next 2 years. And then ever since then, Russell Wilson's career is kind of not flattened out from a personal level, but his team
The
definitely
team,
hasn't
yeah.
gotten back to where he was earlier in his career. I don't think that's the same that's going to happen with Kansas City. I think that we're going to see the Chiefs back. I think that we're going to see the Chiefs back not only, once, maybe twice or three times before it's all said and done. I think there's definitely holes that they need to fix. I think that the Buccaneers definitely exposed some flaws in the Chiefs that we've never seen before, and I think they're a smart organization, and they're going to try their best to patch that up in the draft and in free agency. But I don't think this is the end of Patrick Mahomes. I don't think this is the end of the Kansas City Chiefs. But it's a rough loss, and then I guess we always react to what happened.
Yeah.
So we always
Mhm.
overreact. Like if the Chiefs won this game, we'd be like, it's over. Mahomes is
Yeah.
probably going to be better than Brady at the end. But that's
Mhm.
not what happened. So we take the opposite angle and saying, Mahomes isn't going to touch Brady. This might be it for them because that contract kicks
Mhm.
in and then it's going to flatten out. I don't know if that's the case. I think the Chiefs are going to be fine. I think this is just, you chalk it up to, you just got beat on one given
Yeah.
Sunday. You just got beat. And I think coming into next year, I think they should be the favorite to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I definitely think that in 2021, I still think they're going to ball out. They're probably going to make the Super Bowl again. They very well
Yeah.
might win it, and they might even have a rematch between them and the Bucks. But I do see a very eerily similar kind of, I guess, timeline to the Seahawks. Same deal where after they lost the Super Bowl, that contract for Russell, like Russell got an extension, and then now not next year, but the year after, Mahomes' 50 million kicks in. Like I would honestly say excited to see what their GM and front office does to kind of work around that amount of salary given to one person. Like, I have no idea. That's my biggest fear for the Chiefs is that they're going to run into an issue where like you needed to pay Mahomes. He's probably even getting underpaid. People could argue, but at the end of the day, with the salary cap sport and roster, like how much I guess is too much. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of holes on their team that they're not going to be able to address because of the money. I think it's kind it might break down to being as simple as that. And that's obviously what you see with the Seahawks right now is Russell Wilson is begging for them to get him some help. Now, part of that would be, hey, don't trade 2 first rounders for Jamal Adams. And then the other part is too, well, Russell Wilson is getting $37 million a year. Imagine if he was just say getting 30, then you could kind of get probably a top-notch lineman. Now, I'm not saying he should take a pay cut, but you get what I mean that there's a finite amount of money that you could kind of pay to people. So, at what point does that kind of bubble burst for the QB market?
I wonder why these premier quarterbacks, with all the opportunities they have off the field to make money, whether it be endorsements, business
Mhm.
ventures, I guess appearances, that they don't take more of a team friendly contract and make up that salary with non football income, whether it be commercials or
Mhm.
endorsements or whatever I just said. I'm
Mhm.
surprised that a lot of I think Tom Brady went that route. I know LeBron
Yeah.
went that route because LeBron,
Mhm.
you can make the argument that he makes more money off the court than on the court. Tiger Woods, it's
Yeah.
not a team sport, so it doesn't really apply, but he probably makes so much more
Yeah. Oh
money
my god.
off the course than
Off.
he does
Yeah.
on the course. So I'm surprised
Yeah.
major athletes, especially with a team sport, salary cap sport, don't go that route to, I guess supplement the cash that you would lose
Mhm.
on what the organization's paying you so they can get better talent and then you make it up. But, everybody's entitled to get the contract and the money that they want and they deserve. And Patrick Mahomes definitely going to deserve that money that he's going to get, not next year, the year after. But you hit the nail on the head. How are they going to put together a Super Bowl roster around him with so much money committed to him? Can they
Mhm.
keep Hill? And Kelsey's getting up there in age, so we might see a cheaper alternative at tight end soon. Can they keep the defensive weapons? Can they improve the defense? Can they improve the offensive line that we see now needs improvement? Can they do all that under $50 million committed to Patrick Mahomes? That's tough. We really haven't ever seen it before with someone making that kind of money. Um, have a roster around them. We have perfect examples right now. Wilson's not happy. Rodgers isn't happy. They're both making a lot of money. That's dedicated a lot of percentages, dedicated a large percentage to the salary cap. So it's going to be interesting to see how great Patrick Mahomes is if he could cover up the deficiencies that their roster is going to have because his contract's so high.
Yeah, I mean, again, you referenced other athletes too, and then kind of same deal with A-Rod. He was originally going to go to the Red Sox, and he was going to take a pay cut. So, as much as I even say it a ton too, that hey, they should get what they deserve, but like someone like Russell Wilson, now you hear his comments. I was like, oh, like I'm kind of mad at the front office, and I'm mad that I don't have any protection. I want to stop getting hit. Yeah, like that completely makes sense, and that's totally warranted. But then, hey, maybe again, like I said before, take a $5 million pay cut. Don't get 37, get 32. I think like you could do wonders with that, even if it just allows you to get one extra guy. So I think it's going to eventually get to the point where these Mahomes and these other quarterbacks are going to keep getting, like even Dak eventually too. They're going to complain about, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have that. Well, you're kind of hoarding all the cash. I mean, the cap the cap salary cap is 180 for next year, and then you assume the year after that, say it goes to 200. Mahomes is getting $50 million of that $200 million. So that to me is very eye opening. You're giving a quarter, a full 25% to one player. And I know the quarterback, and you said it, I've agreed with you. Quarterback is the most important position on the field, and probably in the history of sports and in all sports. But 25% of the cap, I think, is borderline madness. And I think that is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And you would hate to see Mahomes' career follow the trajectory of Russell Wilson. I'm not saying Russell Wilson's flamed out in the NFL because, he's still putting together numbers, but his just roster is not there. So it'd suck to see Mahomes get buried under a mediocre roster because of because of what is coming to him and what kind of money is owed. Andy Reid, what do you think his future holds? How much longer do you think he's going to go? Because he has his Super Bowl, so you can never say that, the old adage before last year was that he couldn't win the big game. He won the big game, but he unfortunately lost this big game. He's a guy that's getting up there. Do we think that, the Chiefs might be looking for a new head coach in the coming years?
I would say maybe you give Andy Reid like 2-3 more years max, and I think that's where it's going to get interesting with Bieniemy, because I'm sure the Chiefs would love to have him as their head coach. So maybe there's some internal discussions after this season, because we already know Bieniemy isn't getting a head coach job. Maybe Andy Reid says, "Hey, listen, I'm doing my 2 extra years." Bieniemy signs a 2-year offensive coordinator deal, and then they have a seamless transition with the same. So you have an offensive coordinator becomes head coach, and you still have Mahomes. You still have the same scheme, same game plan, same everything, same signals, all that good stuff. So I think that to me would be a very interesting and seamless transition for the Chiefs. And I definitely think that Reid probably 2 to 3 more years. And it's nothing against his ability, but like you said, he's just getting old. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to do this forever.
One more thing about these two teams before we get into some offseason stuff. The Tyrann Mathieu thing was very weird with the taunting and then getting in Brady's face, and then later saying that, oh, Tom Brady said something. Like he said on Twitter, Tom Brady said something that he wouldn't repeat. And then I guess everybody found out Tom Brady was actually mic'd for the entire game. And then Mathieu deleted the tweet because he realized that he probably couldn't prove it. And then Tom Brady texted him and apologized for the altercation. It was a very weird thing. It was a very unfortunate part of the game. It didn't need to happen. I understand it's the Super Bowl. It's the biggest game of your life, and there's tempers flare, but there's no room for that. And I think Matthew's better than that. I mean, he's had a pass, but he's cleaned it up since he's got to Kansas City. That was, especially when your team's losing and you're losing your composure like that. I thought that really affected the defense for that entire game because, Matthew's one of the leaders of that defense, and he kind of lost it a little bit.
Yeah, and I definitely think you kind of hit the nail on the head there too. Another person too, Chris Jones, was like he was flirting with unnecessary roughness
Mhm.
and then personal fouls that like first quarter. Like I would have thrown $1 billion that he was going to get tossed out of the game. Just like his antics were just very aggressive and extracurricular just after the whistle and stuff like that. And then it kind of bled into Matthew. And then that's a situation where, like you said before, obviously tempers are going to flare, adrenaline's pumping. I get that. But someone like Tyrann Matthew or any player, Christians too, like if you kind of like talk smack in the game, Brady's going to give it back. And that's exactly what he did, especially when he scored on AB. So it's like, it almost seemed like kind of crybaby-ish, I guess,
Yeah.
with Matthew because he was like, obviously he was losing. Same thing with Chris Jones. He was getting bullied. The whole defensive line for the Chiefs was pretty much getting bullied at the line of scrimmage, and they didn't like it. And how did they respond? And it wasn't really a good response. Now, to Matthew's credit, he did kind of clean it up in the second half. Like you really didn't see any altercations. Really, he seemed to kind of be calm. But I definitely think he beyond lost his cool along with the rest of that defense. And you even saw it. He was like mouthing off to a coach and then just threw his helmet down when he ran into the locker room at halftime. Like this is the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Like you got to figure it out.
Yeah. And towards the end of the fourth quarter, there was the I guess Mahomes threw a pick, and then somebody on Tampa threw up deuces in reference to Tyreek
Oh,
Hill doing
Antoine
the
Winfield.
activity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that it just goes back to me to the most shocking thing about that, and really the whole game was how I guess flustered Kansas City was when they've been in this
Mm-hmm.
situation a million times. You can't even say that it was because they were down and they'd never been down before. They're down all the time. So it's not something that's new to them, losing and needing to come from behind. It just felt like the
Mm-hmm.
Super Bowl, for whatever reason, they just they lost their cool. And I thought that was shocking. And I don't know how you fix it. I think it's just I think a lot of this with the Chiefs was just it was just a day. It was a day that every
Yeah.
team has, and it just happened to be on the Super Bowl. But it was just shocking to me that they seem to have they seem to let the moment get the best of them, and they're better than that. And it
Yeah.
attributed to the quality of the game we got.
Oh my, I think so too. I mean, kind of the last thing with that is usually it comes down to kind of leadership and it comes down to the coaching. And again, not to say they have bad in either of the two, but they just needed legit one touchdown, I think, to make everything kind of at ease and make it all right. But they just couldn't get that.
Yeah. I thought they had all the momentum in the world. A couple moments in that game, the interception we talked about, that goal line stand. I
Mm-hmm.
thought Kansas City was going to run
Oh my
away
God.
after
Yeah.
they got
Yeah.
that. They just never were able to get on it. A lot of that was the offensive line. A lot of it was just the defense just couldn't stop Brady. Just making their own mistakes, shooting themselves in the foot. But at the end of the day, the Buccaneers are the world champions, and they will have, that, I guess, bragging rights throughout the summer as we get into
Mm-hmm.
the 2021 season. Right before the Super Bowl, pretty significant news broke. Carson Wentz is about to get traded somewhere. Not sure where,
Mm-hmm.
but he seems to be out the door. Now, I guess the door was open a little bit after the Peterson firing that he might
Mm-hmm.
stay and there might be a little bit of a competition, but he seems to be a guy that's done with the organization as a whole. A lot of teams out there need quarterbacks. We talked about it a lot over the last couple weeks, but Wentz seems like one of the options that might not be the most enticing. He seems like damaged goods to me when there's so many other
Mm-hmm.
options, a Watson, the quarterbacks in the draft, maybe even Russell Wilson, maybe even Aaron Rodgers. So many quarterbacks out there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who's gonna take that chance on Wentz, who was horrible this year. Let's call it as we see it. It was terrible
Yeah.
and deserved to lose
Mm-hmm.
his job to Jalen Hurts. I'm not sure if it's the wisest decision for an organization with all the options they have this summer to choose Carson Wentz.
Yeah, and all the rumors that I saw are leading to that it's the Bears that are
Mhm.
in on Wentz, and people are saying they might be giving up a first rounder and maybe even another pick or another first rounder. I
That's
just
rough.
that and like you said before, like
And all that money.
it go, yeah. So exactly, you're picking up that contract too. So it's like, what about a Dak? What about when Stafford was
I'd make
up
the
and then
argument. I'd rather, if I'm a team, if I'm the Bears and I'm getting rid of Trubinsky because he's not the guy, I'd make the
Mhm.
argument. I'd rather roll the dice with Sam Darnold at a
I was gonna
cheap
say the same thing.
contract than because they're both damaged goods, both Darnold and
Yeah.
Wentz. It just comes down to the fact that, Darnold's on a rookie deal and Wentz is making all this money. So
Mhm.
I don't see the value in Carson Wentz at all, especially to give up a first and second round pick and take that contract. I wouldn't do that if I was any organization.
I think this goes back to something that we've talked about exclusively throughout every single episode, is that in the NFL and most sports too, it's not okay to be okay and to sit in the middle. So now you have the Bears, who are, again, they made the playoffs, but they got spanked by the Saints. They didn't even deserve to be there. Now you have the Bears, who have a guy like Khalil Mack and Roquan Smith, like two premier defensive guys. They want to get the most out of them while they're on the roster. And I can't fault them for that, but it just so happens to be that you screwed up taking Trubisky. So there's strike one. Now you're making a desperation move for a guy like Wentz. And again, I don't think that does anything for that team. And on top of that, you're going to be losing Allen Robinson. So it's like they're a team that is going to be sitting in the middle. And if you're going to be that 8-8, why would you want to give up first rounders?
Yeah.
And on top of that, why would you want to take on Cap? It just, to me, if the move goes through, when it goes through, because I think it is, makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, either be bad or be good. We've talked about this. You just said it. We talked about this a lot. Either be terrible or be good. If you're in that, 10 to 20 range in the draft, that's not a good position. That's why the NBA has a lottery, because they don't want people tanking. There's so many other options than Wentz. And what's really the big difference between, at this point, Trubisky and Wentz? Wentz is obviously a better player, but is that talent upgrade, does that wash out the money that you now owe Carson Wentz? I don't think it does. I think if you're the Bears, I think that you got to either take a quarterback in the draft, or you go big and get Watson, or get whatever big quarterbacks on the trading block. Other teams that might go after Wentz, the Niners. I don't think the Eagles would trade him in division to Washington.
Panthers.
I don't see.
Like,
it's just
like Colts even.
I just don't see the value in it. I don't see the value in Carson Wentz.
No.
If he showed any potential this year, you'd say maybe, but he looked terrible. He looked horrible.
Like maybe if he restructures his contract, but he's not going to do that, because why the hell would he do that?
Yeah, he's not going to do that, because he's never going to make that money back. So it doesn't make sense. Going into the offseason with the NFL, big dates, free agencies in March, drafts at the end of April, and then we go into the summer, and then you got mini camp, training camp, all that. Let's talk about we talked about a little bit when they got eliminated. Let's talk about our teams, Giants and Dolphins. We're officially in the offseason, so officially things are going to start happening. I think that both teams have similar needs. Both teams need those weapons, and both teams, I guess, need to decide, is the quarterback that we currently have a guy that we're going to rely on for 2 to 3 years? For the next, I'm sorry, not 2 to 3 years, for the next 10 years.
Yeah. And I think, like you said before, Dolphins and Giants are in, I think, two great positions, because they both have top 10 in amount of cap, and they both have a lot of draft capital too. So I could even say next year, I think, is the biggest draft class definitely for the Dolphins. And I think even more so for Daniel Jones and the Giants. You need to get him the help he needs, so then you could really start evaluating him, because you don't want to cut ties with him when Golden Tate is his best weapon and you have Evan Ingram dropping balls on the regular. Same thing with Tua. All right, you have him. You had 3 rookie offensive linemen. Now you want to see, all right, what can he do with somewhat of a competent team around him? And then you could start evaluating, all right, maybe we need to go down a different avenue at quarterback. And I think, luckily for both teams, I would say they easily have playoff, if not conference championship level defenses. And I don't think either team is far off from having Super Bowl contending defenses. But both teams on offense, they severely need to upgrade not only their personnel, but honestly just the results and just the outcomes that come from each game. I mean, Giants and Dolphins have shared a similar kind of trajectory where we never really had that crazy, explosive, high-flying offense. And I feel like it's something that we deserve at this point. Like we need something.
I agree.
And again, it's
How many
awesome that
years
we
has their
have good
GM been?
defense.
How many years has the GM for the Dolphins been there?
So he's been there, not as the GM, but he's like been there for like 10 plus years. As the
Okay,
GM, he's been there for like 5 or 6, but we had
5 or 6.
Tannenbaum come in and prior to last year where he got fired, like this was like Chris Greer's first year this past offseason as like the decision maker, because Tannenbaum, even though he wasn't the GM, made all the decisions for whatever reason, and that didn't really do much for us.
I asked that because I know Gettleman's on year 4 or 5. It's not the first three. It's like 4 or 5 at this point. And I think
Mhm.
as a Giant fan that in terms of his job security, playoffs are gone. Now, do you feel the same way
Next
with your
year,
front office,
um,
or you think it's
I
one more year?
I think it's next year, and I think it's a year after that, and I
Okay.
think I think kind of like him, Flores, and Tua. Flores being the guy who's probably the safest, but
Mhm.
GM and Tua being the guys who are, hey, not this year, but the year after that. If you're not doing anything, then hey, maybe you're kind of the reason we're not.
I think the Giants are the same exact way. I think in terms of safety, I think it's Judge, Jones, Gettleman. So if the Giants have a bad
Hmm.
year, I can see Gettleman out, I can see Jones out, and I can see Judge staying. Like I think that big years for those two guys. And it's going to start with the NFL draft. The Giants have the 11th pick, I believe, 11 or 10. So it's not the best position to be in, but there should be a guy or a dude out there at that point that can make that offense better. Dolphins
Yeah,
in a different situation. They have a really good pick at 3. They also have what, 7? They have
they have
3,
three and 18,
3 and
and they have
18.
2 seconds.
Yeah, in two
Yeah.
seconds. So they have a lot to play with. But it becomes a lot more interesting that the Deshaun Watson trade is far from a slam dunk, especially with the Jets. So you might have the Jets
Hmm.
taking someone that the Dolphins might have taken had there been, a trade with Watson going to New York.
Yeah.
So that 3 spot, are you looking at, the guard from Oregon and Seawall or Smith? Who do you think the best guy is for Tua?
I think if they stay put at 3, again, I've been going back and forth and back and forth, and you have to look at, all right, what is the drop off from Sewell to the next best offensive lineman? Then you have to look at what is the drop off, not just from Smith, but from Smith, Chase, and Waddle to the next best kind of group of wide receivers.
Those
And I
3 guys aren't
think
going to be there at 18 probably.
exactly. So that's why I'm kind of counting all of them. So I want to say I haven't done too much research, but just from what I've seen, that the drop off from Sewell to the next best offensive lineman is a lot bigger than the drop off in those top 3 wide receivers to the bottom. So that leads me to believe, and the same reason or kind of same way we look at the Chiefs and their mishaps was their offensive line was terrible. So it might not be the best pick, but go get, or as of right now, go get the Oregon guard tackle
Yeah.
Penei Sewell.
And some fans are going to be like kind of roll their eyes and groan at that because it's not the most
Of
it's not
course.
exciting. And everybody wants the
Exactly.
receiver, everybody wants the quarterback, everyone wants the running back, right? But as
Hmm.
we've seen in the Super Bowl 2 days ago, if you don't have that offensive line, doesn't matter how good your receivers are, doesn't matter how good your quarterback
Hmm.
is, because the Chiefs have the
Hmm.
best receivers and the best quarterback, but they didn't have the offensive line on Sunday and they got killed. So
Yep.
even if the Dolphins take Sewell and the fans are like, come on, we wanted Smith, we wanted
Yeah.
Chase.
Hmm.
In the long run, it'll be probably best for Tua because you can find wide receivers anywhere, and you can find
Exactly.
them
And you
next year
still
in
have
the
free
first round
agency.
too. And there's free agency with all that pick, and you have so many picks that you can get 2 receivers in 18 and the second round pick you have, and then get another
Hmm.
offensive line guy with that other second round pick if they don't trade back or make a trade.
Yeah.
So I think the
Hmm.
Dolphins are in a good spot no matter what they do. The Giants is a little more
Hmm.
pressing because they don't have the,
Yes.
I guess, safety nets that the Dolphins do. They don't have another first round
Yeah.
pick and they don't have a million second round picks. Giants need
Yeah.
to get it right. I've seen mock drafts with Kyle Pitts. I like Kyle Pitts, but it
Hmm.
kind of sucks that you're essentially giving up on Evan Ingram and then you're
Yeah.
admitting that was a mistake. And that's kind of annoying because now you're resetting at a position when you could have, if Evan Ingram was just good at his job, you could have just addressed another position that you need. So
Hmm.
the Giants need to decide what Ingram's future is and you got to see who's there. It's hard to predict what the Giants are going to have at their disposal because so much can happen in the first 10 picks that doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
I would love a receiver. I think it needs to be a weapon for Jones because you can have Barkley
Mhm.
back. You need that. You need that downfield threat if you're Jones, not only for
Mhm.
him but to respect it for Barkley to open up play action, to open up
Mhm.
open up space in the flat for Saquon. So the Giants, you can read all the mock drafts if you want as a Giants fan. You just got to wait until April 30th or whenever it is. You just got to wait until that day and see what happens, see what's on the board.
Now, how would you feel, say, if the Giants prior to the draft dealt Evan Ingram? Like, would that then be a slam dunk to get Kyle Pitts?
Now, what are you getting? What are you getting for Evan Ingram though?
Let's say I feel like
Can you get a second round pick for Evan Ingram?
I was gonna say maybe I feel like you could get a late second or early third. I feel like
Yeah.
that shouldn't be too
I mean,
crazy.
if there's a draft day trade where they give up Ingram and they get another second round pick, I guess I'm down for Pitts and then have that second round pick and then you have
Mhm.
2 second round picks to address, I guess, wide receiver and I guess defensive edge. I can see
Yeah.
that, but you know, I just don't like the fact that we spent a first round pick on Ingram and then within
Mhm.
5 years or 4 years, whenever it was, we have to take another tight end in the first round. I think Pitts can be a very good
Yeah.
I think Pitts can be a very good tight end in the league. It's just, I guess, the
Mhm.
principle that the Giants are admitting they fucked up with Ingram, and that's kind of annoying. I don't like Ingram. I want him off the team, but I'd
Yeah.
rather use that pick at the receiver position where they're completely behind the eight ball. So I don't know.
No, yeah, and again, it's going to be very interesting to see how both of our teams tackle free agency, and I think that will basically dictate and kind of lay out a game plan for what the draft is going to look like. But overall, definitely agree with you 100% that the Giants are in a trickier position where Gettleman's job, and I know we've said this for the past couple of years, but this year, 2021 draft class, his job is probably on the line. Like
Yeah.
if that draft pick doesn't pan out and doesn't pan out within the next year or two, then you have to say, all right, listen, he's got to go because,
Yeah.
like you said
Giants
in
have to make the
previous
playoffs this year.
episodes,
The division's
yes,
not making that much of an improvement where it's going to be the best division in football. It's still probably going to be the worst division in football. Wentz is going to be out of there, so the Eagles are going to have theoretically a rookie quarterback in Hurts.
hmm
Um, I guess Dak coming back healthy would make the Cowboys the, I guess, favorite in that division. We have no idea
yeah,
what Washington's going to be because we don't know who their quarterback is.
hmm
The Giants, they have a window if they make the right off-season, I guess, acquisitions and moves to challenge the Cowboys to win that division. And I think that they went from
I
4
definitely
and
think so
12
too.
to 6 and 10. I need at least 9 and 7. I need at least 9 and 7 in 2021. If anything less than that, I'm getting rid of anything less than that with no playoffs is out for Gettleman. If they go 8 and 8 and make the playoffs, fine. But anything less than 9 and 7 and making the playoffs, I'm not happy with. But I
Yeah,
guess we'll
and
see.
I think that's also perfectly fine to raise your expectations. I mean, it's very lazy for fans of teams when they should be in positions to again not win a Super Bowl, but they should be competitive. They should be competing for divisional titles, especially when, like you said before, division isn't that strong. There's no reason the Giants with that defense and they still have some continuity in Daniel Jones and Saquon coming back, and you have Andrew Thomas now year two. Why shouldn't they be a divisional kind of contender? Like, it should be kind of be no really if ands or buts about it. Like they have to be contending for one, and if they're not, then somebody kind of needs to get fired for it.
I just looked it up because I didn't know for sure if there was going to be this year, but there's going to be no combine this year.
Yeah,
That's hard.
I've
That's
seen.
hard to decipher talent. You can't interview the guy. You can't see
Mhm.
them in all the drills. You're gonna have to go to their campus and watch them. That's a
Yeah,
real that's tough for scouts and general managers to deal with this offseason.
I definitely think that the people sitting out for again, we're assuming for COVID reasons, and then they have every right to. But if people kind of just sat out to sit out, I think like guys like Jamar Chase and Micah Parsons are going to get severely hurt, especially when they can't show up to the combine and compete against some of the best players in the nation. So now they have to do it just at a pro day. Even if they do that, like I really don't know how it's going to work. And I think that's why the Dolphins and Panthers were kind of foaming at the mouth for the Senior Bowl. And I know they didn't get all the best players, but I would say they got a decent chunk of them, and they got their hands on them, and they could interview them 24/7 for that week that they had them. And now you're looking at like this evaluation process for these other teams is going to be very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how it's different going to be with the combine, because a lot of these scouts get a lot of information, not only their on-field abilities, but how they are off the field with the combine, being there in person, interviewing them face to face. So we'll see how that goes with the draft coming up at the end of April. Anything else before, any last, I guess, thoughts on the Super Bowl? Any early thoughts on the offseason before we wrap up this episode?
I just again, my only thing with the offseason, and we talked about it last week, is that I don't think Watson is going to be traded at all.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard. That Stafford trade really killed him.
I think so too.
Yeah, I don't. He's gonna have to figure it out. I said this last week. Like, when we get to June and July and training camp opens, let's see if he's actually serious about not playing for Houston, because he can talk all the shit he wants now. But until he's forced to either sit out or take those fines that he'll get, we'll never know if he's serious. And that handcuffs a lot of teams, because if you're, let's say, the Jets and you want Watson, but you're also looking at blanking on the quarterback at Ohio State,
Zach Wilson.
Yeah, Justin Fields. Of the quarterbacks, Justin Fields, any of the quarterbacks. If you can't wait on Watson. What if you draft Fields, right? And then all of a sudden the Texans trade Watson away, and you weren't able to give them the fresh draft pick where they can make the decision that they want. This Watson thing is going to hang over the league for a long time until there's a resolution one way or the other.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. And I think, again, with the way the Texans seem to have no urgency to trade him, that to me tells me that they're not gonna, because if they were gonna make a deal, just like you said, you're gonna do it before the draft.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. We'll be there every step of the way. Long off season. NFL has the longest off season because they have the shortest season. So I looked it up: 212 days until week 1 of next year, which is daunting. But we get through it every year.
Yeah,
it'll be fine. Pitchers and catchers reports next week, so we got that. We got that going for us, and
even more important.
That leads us right into the entire summer, right into the NFL again. So it's a constant cycle of, I guess, heartbreak for us. Yankees. We watch the Yankees all spring and summer for them to lose in the ALCS, and then we shift right into the Dolphins and Giants for them not to even make the playoffs, and then we go right back into the Yankees again. So that's just the way our lives work. But we do it anyway, year after year. That will just about do it for this edition of Ice the Kicker. For Matt Farrar, my name is Glen and Matt. We will see you next week.